The Germans thought they had seen every kind of enemy. But that morning, they saw her. The woman who didn't beg, didn't cry, just stared back at them with a calmness that froze every soldier in place. Some said her beauty was a trap. Some said it was a warning. But the truth was far more dangerous, because within minutes, those hardened German soldiers made choices they were never trained for, never prepared for, and never expected. And it all started with the moment she climbed out of that trench. The trench was cold, wet, and carved like an open grave. Yet the moment she rose from it, the world above paused. Her hair was messy from the mud, her clothes torn from the chase, but somehow she looked even more dangerous because of it. The German soldiers didn't speak at first. They simply stared, unsure whether she was a spy, a survivor, or something they were never trained to face. Lieutenant Krause stepped forward. He had interrogated dozens of prisoners. None of them ever shook him. But the way she looked at him, calm, confident, almost amused, made his breath catch for a moment. "Name?" he demanded. His voice was firm, but his eyes betrayed something else. She tilted her head slightly, brushing a lock of dirt-covered hair away from her face. Even that small motion made the soldiers shift uncomfortably, as if she controlled the space more than they did. "My name doesn't matter," she whispered, her voice soft, almost hypnotic. "What matters is what comes next." A murmur ran through the men. Krause narrowed his eyes, but he wasn't immune. Her presence had an energy, not seduction, but something even more dangerous, confidence. A woman who knew she could influence a room without saying a word. One soldier swallowed hard, lowering his rifle just an inch. Krause noticed and stepped closer to her, almost instinctively. "You think you can charm your way out of this?" he asked. She leaned forward slightly, just enough that he felt her breath, not touching him, not crossing a line, just close enough to make his pulse rise. "I don't charm," she said. "I survive." For a second, a very small, very dangerous second, the trench felt warmer. Energy shifted. The soldiers were no longer thinking like soldiers. And that was exactly what she wanted. Krause took a slow breath. He could feel his men watching him, waiting to see whether he would stay in command or fall into the gravity she carried around her like a weapon. "Search her," he finally ordered. But she smiled, a small, knowing smile, because she could already see doubt forming in their eyes. A doubt she intended to use. As two soldiers stepped in, she lifted her hand slowly. Her movements were soft, controlled, but there was something undeniably magnetic in the way she held herself. One soldier hesitated, just for a moment. And in war, hesitation is the most dangerous thing. Krause saw it. And he knew this woman wasn't just beautiful. She was a threat, wrapped in beauty, disarming men without touching a single one. And that was how it all began. The two soldiers stepped closer, rifles lowered, eyes uncertain. She watched their hesitation the way a predator watches a heartbeat. Krause felt something tightening inside him. He had seen soldiers freeze before, but never because of a woman. "Proceed," he ordered. But she turned her gaze to him, slowly, deliberately, and it stopped him more effectively than any weapon. Her eyes weren't begging. They were calculating. She knew exactly how much power she had right now, and she was using every second. One soldier reached out to check her pockets. His hand trembled. She noticed. "Careful," she whispered. Her voice wasn't loud, but it slid through the cold air like warm silk. The soldier's breath hitched. Krause clenched his teeth. This wasn't normal. This wasn't discipline. This was influence. And it was happening right in front of him. "Step back," he barked. But the soldier didn't step back. He kept staring at her, as if trapped in some invisible gravity. She leaned in just slightly, her lips brushing close to his ear without ever touching it. "You don't want to do this," she murmured. The man froze. For a moment, she could have told him to drop the rifle, and he would have obeyed. Kraus shoved him aside and grabbed her by the wrist, not roughly, just enough to reassert control. "Enough games," he growled. She didn't pull away. She didn't panic. She simply lifted her chin and let her breath hit his neck. Soft, warm, dangerous. "If I were playing games," she whispered, "you'd already know." A shiver went up his spine, and that terrified him more than any spy ever had. He pushed her back gently, trying to hide the reaction he couldn't control. One of the soldiers whispered, "Sir, what do we do with her?" Kraus didn't have an answer, and she knew it. So she smiled, slow, confident, devastating. "You have no idea who I am," she said. "Or why I let you catch me." The wind went silent. The soldiers exchanged tense looks. Kraus stepped forward. "Then tell me." And her answer was a whisper that changed everything. "I'm here because one of you is already working for us." The soldiers stiffened. Hands tightened on triggers. Eyes shifted nervously. She had thrown a flame into dry grass, and now the fire was spreading. Kraus swallowed, trying to read her face. She wasn't lying. He could feel it. "Who?" he demanded. But she only leaned back against the dirt wall of the trench, sliding down slowly, elegantly, her breath steady, her confidence absolute. "You'll find out," she said softly. "Because he's the one. Who will try to protect me?" That single sentence hit the soldiers harder than any bullet. Kraus felt the world narrowing, closing in, suffocating. Because now the question wasn't, is she dangerous? It was, which one of my men just betrayed the Reich for her? And she watched them all crack from the inside, exactly as she intended. Silence dropped over the trench like a blanket of snow, heavy, suffocating, dangerous. The woman sat calmly against the dirt wall, her knees drawn up, her breathing steady, as if she were the one interrogating them. The soldiers stood frozen, eyes darting at one another, each suddenly wondering the same thing. Is it him? Kraus felt his pulse pounding in his neck. He needed answers, but she had taken control of the entire battlefield without lifting a finger. He stepped toward her. "You're lying." She didn't even look up, just brushed a streak of mud from her cheek, with a motion so soft, so deliberate. The soldier's eyes unconsciously followed it. "If I were lying," she whispered, "you wouldn't be this frightened." Kraus stiffened. Because she was right. He was frightened, not of her beauty, but of her strategy. She was turning his men into suspects with a few carefully chosen words. One soldier, Schmidt, suddenly spoke up. "Sir, she's trying to divide us." "That's what spies do." She lifted her gaze, directly at Schmidt. "Is that why?" she murmured. "Your hands haven't stopped shaking since the moment you saw me climb out." Schmidt's face went pale. Another soldier glanced at him nervously. "Why are your hands shaking?" Schmidt stepped back. I'm cold, that's all." But he wasn't cold. Everyone could see that. The woman's eyes softened, not seductive, but knowing, a look that pierced deeper than any weapon. "Kraus," she said gently, "ask him where he was 10 minutes before you found me." Schmidt snapped. "That doesn't matter." But it did, because his voice cracked, and cracks turned into collapses. Kraus's jaw tightened. "Schmidt," he said. "Answer her." Schmidt swallowed hard. His boots shifted in the mud. The other soldiers were staring now, their rifles still pointed down, but their suspicions rising like steam. I was scouting," Schmidt muttered. "And did you," she asked softly, "warn anyone that I was coming?" Schmidt's breath caught. Because he hadn't. The woman leaned her head back against the wall, a small, controlled smile forming on her lips. "You see?" she whispered. "It only takes one lie to expose the truth." Kraus's stomach dropped. He hadn't expected anyone to crack this fast. He turned to Schmidt. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Schmidt opened his mouth, but no words came out. And the woman? She watched quietly, her expression calm but her eyes alive with fire. Because this was no accident, no coincidence. This was her plan. To make them question one another, to make them fall apart. to make them protect her without even realizing they were doing it. For the first time, Krause understood she didn't need weapons. She had them. The tension inside the trench had turned into something sharp, a blade hanging over every soldier's throat. Schmidt's breath grew uneven. Krause could see sweat forming on his forehead despite the freezing air. "Schmidt," he repeated quietly, "tell me the truth." Schmidt looked at the woman, then at the other soldiers. His throat moved as he swallowed. "I didn't betray anyone," he whispered. "But I couldn't shoot her." The confession rippled through the men, like the crack of distant artillery. Krause felt his stomach twist. "Why?" he demanded. Schmidt didn't answer. "Because he didn't need to." The answer was written all over his face: fear, guilt, confusion, and something else he didn't dare name. The woman slowly stood, mud sliding down her clothes, her posture calm as if she were walking into a ballroom instead of a battlefield. She stepped closer to Schmidt, not touching him. Not even near enough. Just close enough for him to feel the softness in her voice. "You saw me running," she said. "You aimed your rifle. But you hesitated." Schmidt looked away. His voice was barely a whisper. "You didn't look like the enemy." Krause felt the ground shift beneath him. This was the beginning of chaos, not from bullets, but from human weakness. The woman turned her eyes to Krause now, her expression shifting from softness to steel. "You want to know why I'm here?" she said. "Why I let you catch me?" Krause forced his voice steady. "Yes." She took a slow breath, then spoke. "Because I needed time to get close enough to destroy your communications post." The soldier stiffened. Krause's eyes widened. "That's impossible." "You had no weapons." "No," she agreed. "But I had something better." Her gaze swept over the men. Their uncertainty, their shaken discipline, their swallowed breaths. "I had all of you." Before the words settled, a distant explosion rolled through the forest, deep, thunderous, unmistakable. The men turned their heads in horror. The communications bunker, their link to command, was burning. She had done it. Not with force, not with seduction, with psychology, with control. Krause spun back toward her. But she was already stepping backward toward the trench's far end, where the shadows grew darker. "You didn't capture me," she said softly. "I delivered myself to distract you." Another explosion echoed, closer this time. Her allies. Her extraction team. Krause lifted his rifle, but his hand shook. Not from cold, but from the way she looked at him. Not with hatred, not with fear, but with something almost sad. A soldier whispered, "Sir, should we shoot?" Krause didn't answer, because he suddenly understood. If he fired, his men would never trust him again. If he didn't, she would escape. She stepped onto the ladder at the far end of the trench, her silhouette framed by firelight. Hair messy, clothes torn, yet she looked almost untouchable. At the top, she paused and looked back at them one last time. "War isn't won by bullets," she said. "It's won by who controls the mind." Then she vanished over the edge, swallowed by smoke and darkness. Krause ran to the top, but saw only flames and fading footprints. Schmidt exhaled shakily. Another soldier whispered, "What now?" Krause stared at the burning forest, his voice low, heavy, defeated. "Now, we report to command that one woman just outsmarted an entire patrol." He lowered his rifle. "And pray we never meet her again."